Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our webinar to launch the Delaware Zoning Atlas. I am Sarah Bronin, and I guess I founded the National Zoning Atlas, and I'm joined today by two of our amazing senior analysts, Ashley Graham-Clark and Coral Troxel. They will both be introducing themselves and where else they have worked beyond Delaware when we get to their part of the presentation. I'm really grateful to have had them with our project for several years now and that they're joining us today to present. It's my job to introduce the contents of the presentation as well as to go through this first part of our presentation, which is why the National Zoning Atlas. Then I'm going to turn it over to our analysts who will tell us how it's made, who will talk about using the National Zoning Atlas by doing a live demo, who will summarize how Delaware zones, drawing from our efforts and distilling key trends. And finally, I'll come back in the fifth part of our presentation and talk about how Delaware can use the National Zoning Atlas going forward. So with that, we will start with why the National Zoning Atlas. And first, we might want to say what it is. So the NZA is an online interactive map documenting information about zoning, local regulation of land uses, structures, and lots at the scale of districts. Zoning might seem to be a pretty obscure area of law, pretty arcane, hundreds of pages of documents when we think about a zoning code, but it actually is really critically important to the way that we live today, whether that is whether we have accessibility to housing, how healthy we are, how healthy our environment is, access to educational and job opportunities, and a lot more. So zoning is hugely impactful on everything that we do, and that's why the National Zoning Atlas is documenting it. We are really trying to help people understand how zoning works. And I think this is especially important, and I know there's conversations going on right now in Delaware, but especially important in places that are growing as quickly as Delaware is growing. So just looking at some of the headlines that you see in news stories across the state, and this is just both this month, the last couple too, and in prior months, looking at population projections. The headlines are real, the topics are important, especially lawmakers are looking right now in Delaware on housing and zoning. Luckily, that is exactly what our project aims to understand. So we really hope that the Delaware Zoning Atlas is useful as you engage in these conversations, but just at the outset, we wanted to point out that this is a really important issue to Delawareans, and we hope, again, that it's useful. Very big picture, our project is a national project. So we are researchers based all over the country who have pulled together to analyze zoning information across now more than 9,900 jurisdictions. This map shows where we have worked. And the purple areas show where we have seen zoning regulations and we've digitized them. The places that are gray show where we have reviewed local rules and found that there is no zoning. So we've confirmed there is no zoning. And then the white areas are those areas where we have not yet worked. So you can see that we're pulling together information from across the country. We've done Alaska, Hawaii, we've done the Southwest, we've done most of Texas, Montana, New York State. We've done big metro areas like Atlanta, St. Louis, Minneapolis. Kansas City is one that's underway right now. New Orleans, Tulsa, some Florida metros, and 17 full states. Delaware is our 17th state, and we're really excited that it is joining the National Zoning Atlas today. So summarizing that progress, like I said, 9,900 jurisdictions, that's 58% of the country's population, 60% of the land area, thank you, Alaska, and 106,000 published zoning districts to the map. Altogether, we have read, and Ashley, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of pages you've read at this point, maybe you can tell us, but 1.17 million pages of zoning codes so far. That is a lot of information. And what we are doing is we have been taking that information and distilling it again at the scale of districts and pushing it back out into the map. So to tell us more about this, Ashley is going to come on and explain to us the methodology for creating the atlas. Ashley, take it away.
Thank you, Sarah. As mentioned, I'm Ashley, a senior zone analyst at the NZA, where I've worked on states ranging from Arizona to North Carolina, and definitely been exposed to a number of zoning texts and pages. So let's take a moment to just understand the NZA methodology. Analysis begins by identifying jurisdictions, and these include cities, counties, and towns with zoning authority. Here we see 6 of the 60 jurisdictions that have the right to exercise zoning in Delaware, of which all but one with zoning provided zoning data. First, we identify whether a jurisdiction enacts zoning. Then we collect the 2 main components of a complete zoning code, the zoning text and the zoning map. Both are necessary. While the zoning ordinance contains key information, we also need to know where its provisions apply throughout the jurisdiction and how much land is allocated to each use. Here we see examples of the text on the left and the map on the right, both used for analysis. Each jurisdiction with zoning is made up of zoning districts with different regulations. On the right, you can see an example of 10 of the 24 zoning districts in Wilmington as they appear in the NZA editor. You can see the district names along with the type of district, ranging from primarily residential to non-residential. Here we see base districts, which are usually the main classifications on the zoning map. But we also do include overlay districts, which are districts that overlap one or more base districts to provide additional regulations in line with the objective of the overlay. With a complete code, team members then follow 2 work streams per jurisdiction, text analysis and geospatial analysis. The text analyst first identifies the list of districts and logs key data points using NZA's standardized methodology, while the geospatial analyst locates the zoning districts and, depending on the available format, either works to digitize a PDF map or standardizes existing geospatial data. Both work hand in hand to create the zoning districts as they appear in each jurisdiction on the atlas. Zoning analysts record up to 200 data points for each district. Key elements include the types of housing permitted from single family to 4 or more multifamily housing, and whether these homes are allowed as of right or require a public hearing. Analysts also log minimum lot sizes, yard setbacks, building heights, parking requirements, affordable housing provisions, accessory dwelling unit regulations, and much more. So, based on our analysis, we have highlighted some zoning attributes that are unique to Delaware. One was found in Newcastle County, where single-family attached dwellings are allowed and defined as attached dwelling units, including semi-detached, twin, atrium, weak link, townhouse types, and quadruplex. This differs from what we generally see when conducting analysis. We also found that although there was not much available GIS data, the maps were straightforward and easy to translate. So that was great in doing the work, in helping do the work. I'll now turn it over to Coral to discuss how you can use the NZA.
Thank you, Ashley. My name is Coral, and I'm a senior geospatial analyst at the NZA. I've worked with zoning data for a number of states, including Texas, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut, to name a few. Now that we've covered the basics of how the atlas is populated with zoning data, we're going to walk through how to use the interactive map and get the most out of its features. To follow along with me, head to zoningatlas.org/atlas. You can use a computer or mobile phone, but know that the size of the map will be different for both. While you get set up, I'll share the map view at the national scale. Here, the legend reflects the zone status of the jurisdictions in purple and gray. The areas shown in white are yet to be analyzed and integrated into the NZA. If you have the tribal land and protected land layers on, you will also see these green and green-brown layers. This is most visible in the western United States. In the Legend and Layer Options box in the upper left corner, you have a few options to toggle on and off additional layers and features. Here you can also change the base map. Now we'll use the zoom and filter box to explore a chosen geography. When we select Delaware in the state dropdown, the map zoomed to the state. Zooming in further allows you to see how different places permit or don't permit housing. And we can be even more specific with our geography selection. We see Philadelphia, Camden, Wilmington in the metro micropolitan area dropdown, Newcastle County in the county dropdown, and Wilmington in the jurisdiction dropdown. The map zoomed to the city of Wilmington and outlined the jurisdiction in black. Also note that you can only select one jurisdiction at this time. At this scale, notice that the legend updates to show zoning district type. Light purple areas indicate primarily residential districts, meaning these districts are primarily zoned for residential uses. Dark purple areas indicate mixed with residential districts, meaning these districts allow a mix of residential and non-residential uses. Tan areas indicate non-residential districts, meaning residential as a primary use is prohibited. These zones typically allow for industrial uses or things like airports or open space. Filters allow you to clearly see the way zoning permits or constrains residential development. Now let's apply filters to the map. The Show Me Where People Can Build box has options for quick filtering, like to show where missing middle housing or apartments are allowed. In this image, we toggled on the single family homes filter, and you can see the map lost some color compared to the default view. Areas remain colored in when their criteria satisfies the selected filters. In other words, this means that you can build a single family home anywhere the map is light or dark purple. In the lower right corner, the filtering results box calculates the zoned acres and number of districts that satisfy the filtering criteria. According to these results, 56% of zoned acres in Wilmington or 54% of zoning districts allow single-family houses by right. Note that the filtering results only apply to the calculations for the single selected jurisdiction. Going back to the Show Me Where People Can Build box at the top left corner, we toggled where apartments with 4 or more units can be built. And you can see the change in the locations that meet the criteria. According to the filtering results box, you can see that the percentage is decreased to 18% of zoned acres or 21% of Wilmington zoning districts, meeting the criteria for apartments with 4 or more units. The difference between where single family and multifamily housing are permitted is readily apparent if we toggle back and forth between these two filters. Now let's look at the advanced filters box. You can use it for selecting more specific filtering criteria, like whether 1, 2, 3, or 4 plus family housing is also subject to a public hearing, minimum parking requirements, or height caps, among other options. We've selected criteria where single-family housing is allowed as of right and has a maximum lot size requirement. According to the filtering results, 42% of zone acres and 42% of zoning districts in Wilmington satisfy this criteria. And with that, I'll pass it back to Ashley.
Thanks, Coral. Now that we're more familiar with the atlas and the database, let's see how Delaware zones. So we'll start with some statewide figures. And just to give you a sense of how zoning is managed across Delaware. So this screenshot from the Atlas shows in purple that 57 of its 60 jurisdictions in Delaware are zoned. And across all 60 jurisdictions, with zoning and complete codes, we analyzed just over 9,000 pages of zoning ordinance text and logged up to 200 data points for each of the 739 districts. We found an average of 13 districts per jurisdiction and an average of 167 pages per code. These are much lower numbers in terms of what we've seen across the country, because we know the national average number of pages per code is 187. Let's break down the share of land categories across Delaware. So 82% of land across the state is subject to zoning, as we see here, while 8% is protected land, as we see in green. The remaining 9% is unzoned land, which includes the 3 jurisdictions that do not have zoning. Of that 82% of zoned land across Delaware, almost all of it allows housing, 97% of it to be exact. This includes 46% for primarily residential land and 51% for mixed with residential land, while only 3% is non-residential and includes uses such as industrial, institutional, commercial, or open space. Let's take a moment to dig into the zoning specifics of residential development in Delaware. First, we'll look at types of housing permitted across the state, and then we'll compare how much land allows multifamily housing in Dover, the Dover metro area, and Delaware as a whole. For this presentation, we define multifamily housing as lots with 4 or more units. The figures show the share of residential land zoned for different types of housing. Let's look deeper at how this breaks down by housing type. From left to right, we see columns for 1, 2, 3, and 4 or more family housing units per lot. The darker blue represents the percentage where housing is allowed by right, while the lighter blue requires a public hearing and gray is prohibited. Single-family housing is by far the most allowed by right, at 98%. That number drops to 12% for 2-family, 3-family, and 4-family housing. In Delaware, the vast majority of residential land allows for single-family development. For the 2-family, 3-family, and 4-family housing units, 46% of land can be used after a public hearing takes place and is approved. But these discretionary legal processes add costs, time, and uncertainties that can limit financing opportunities, discouraging development altogether. In many cases, public hearings can in effect function as a form of prohibition. Speaking of prohibition, the large gray bar tells us that multifamily housing in Delaware is prohibited entirely on just under half of residential land across the state. This is where we see 42%. So how does multifamily housing fare in Dover metro area? As we can see, its distribution across the region is far from even. In Dover, 4 or more family housing is allowed by right on 32% of the city's residential land. Now compare this with the entire metro area, which drops to only 2%. These numbers suggest that there's room for improvement when it comes to housing diversity across the state and its metro areas. Minimum lot sizes are another important zoning regulation. These rules set the smallest amount of land on which a home can be built. Lot sizes are regulated in terms of either square feet or acres. These minimums are often quite large, resulting in unsustainable development patterns that fuel sprawl, drive up housing costs, increase both commute times and traffic, and limit who can afford to live in a particular community. This donut chart shows the breakdown of minimum lot size requirements for single-family zoned land across the state. The darker green, the larger the area required, the larger the lot size. 89% of single-family land has varied lot size standards. This usually means a single zone allows several single-family housing types, where each type is tied to a different minimum lot size. Or there are different lot size requirements based on soil type or sewer and water access. The remainder of one family land, which is 11%, has a minimum lot size of nearly 1 acre or 40,000 square feet. Up next are accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. These are secondary homes located on the same lot as a primary residence. ADUs are gaining popularity as they are cheaper, flexible, and meaningful ways to expand housing options in communities across the country. This donut shows ADU permissions on single-family zoned land across the state. The darkest orange is the most permissive, the lightest orange is the least permissive, and the gray is prohibited. While ADUs are allowed by right on 28% of single-family land and prohibited only on 20%, the most common approach to ADUs, which applies to 50% of single-family zoned land, is to allow them with a public hearing, which, as mentioned before, can often act as a subtle form of prohibition. Very few ADU allowances are subject to occupancy restrictions. If ADU occupancy restrictions are so common statewide, then what does this look like in Dover? ADUs are entirely restricted in Dover, but change drastically from 0% to 93% in the metro area, while the state drops to 28%. ADU regulations vary by jurisdiction or county and seem to be intended to provide spaces to generate income through rentals or living spaces for family members. Finally, let's take a look at parking mandates. Parking utilizes valuable land and can be expensive to build, making it an important regulation to track because those added costs can deter new housing. In Delaware, 99% of residential lands have rules requiring off-street parking. These regulations apply across our 1, 2, 3, and 4 or more family housing treatments. So there definitely is room to improve. Now I'll pass it over to Sarah, who will share more about how to use the tools.
Thanks, Ashley, and thanks, Coral. I'm just going to close with a couple of links on our website where you can actually find first some of the graphics that you just saw at our snapshots page, zoningatlas.org/snapshots. And by the way, I do see a question in the Q&A. Please keep them coming. I forgot to invite folks to do that at the beginning of the call. And as we go through our last few slides here, again, please feel free to include questions in the Q&A. On the snapshots page, back to that, you saw a lot of graphics today, bar charts and donuts and figures that actually can all be found on our website. You can choose a jurisdiction, a full county and all the jurisdictions contained in the county, a full metro or micropolitan area and all the jurisdictions contained in that, and then the state as a whole when you go to the snapshots page. And here we've limited it to Delaware and picked Dover, Kent County, and the Dover metro areas here. So you can see 3 zoning snapshots side by side. You use the drop downs that you saw in the prior slide. And Dover on the left is just a single jurisdiction zoning snapshot. So you see the title right under the light blue header in the dark blue zoning snapshot for a jurisdiction. So the one on the left is just the city of Dover. You see 249 pages, 47 zoning districts. And if you squint very carefully, you can see some of those charts in blue that you were just showing the housing units allowed by right in 1, 2, 3, and 4 family columns. You can also produce those charts on minimum lot sizes and accessory dwelling units. Interestingly, about Dover, you see an entirely gray donut for accessory dwelling units. That means we think that they're not allowed in the city of Dover, which would be consistent with what we've seen in other places. Move to the middle and you'll see in Kent County, where there are 20 jurisdictions analyzed, 17 of them have zoning, so 3 don't have zoning. And you see some differences, including in those blue bar charts in the middle, a lot less 2, 3, and 4 family housing allowed in the county. So again, this Dover plus its surrounding suburbs within the county. So you're seeing that 99% for single family housing. And then you can actually barely just see the blues in the 2, 3, and 4 family columns. You do see, however, that accessory dwelling units are much more widely permitted in the county. And then in the Dover metro area, again, you look at that little blue subheader where it says metro area zoning snapshot, you know we're in the metro area. And you see it looks pretty identical to Kent County because those are actually contiguous. In addition to the snapshots, you can learn more about zoning on our resources page. So this is the second link that I wanted to send you to. And I hope you do get inspired by exploring the resources page. We categorize our website, we categorize the resources in one of a few ways. If you turn to the next slide, our zoning atlas has been used in advocacy. So there's an image from Connecticut, which is where the first zoning atlas was built. We've used it in reports. So one of several statewide and region-wide reports, zoning report Massachusetts. We don't have the funding to do a zoning report for Delaware, but we'd certainly love to do that at some point. These are 30 or 40 page documents that really dig down into the details, that look at those, look at the maps that Coral showed you, look at the findings that Ashley explained how we explained making. And again, just distilling the trends that we see. So again, we'd love to do that in Delaware. But our last one that we did a couple months ago is from Massachusetts. We've also used the Zoning Atlas to partner with other organizations on how zoning interacts with certain related topics. So whether that's demographic analysis that we've done, or whether in the image that you see here, a sea level rise analysis that the Regional Plan Association spearheaded, looking at where zoning was putting housing in areas that were prone to flooding and sea level rise. Because again, as I said at the top, zoning is really important. It tells us where we can live, where we can work, where we can play. And if we're putting housing in particular in the wrong places, in places that will be flooded in the near future or in the somewhat near future, that's probably a bad idea. So be inspired, visit our resources page, and consider how you might use the Zoning Atlas in Delaware. Last thing I wanted to share was that we have just finished our first 2 states in our sister project, the National Preservation Atlas, which is online at preservationatlas.org. Here you see the state of Connecticut, and everything in red, which it's not a lot, but it's 2% of the state overall. Everything in red shows those places that have been designated historic on official registers of historic places. So lots concentrated in New Haven and Hartford, and actually in Connecticut, a rich rural agricultural story. And I encourage you to visit that. URL, we've also built it in Nevada because we wanted to try 2 different states and 2 different states where we had actually completed the zoning atlas in its entirety. So Delaware could be one of the states in our pipeline for the preservation atlas as well. Feel free to drop questions about that project in the chat. But we hope you've enjoyed our overview. We will get to a few minutes of questions now. And I do want to always close on our last slide, which tells you where you can find us, whether that is on Blue Sky or LinkedIn or Instagram, YouTube, online, and our email address. We try to respond to everything as quickly as possible. So with that, we will, I think, close the slides, and I will ask Ashley and Coral to come back on if they are there, and we will go through some questions. My first question is going to be to Coral, actually. So we saw in one of the slides that Delaware has experienced a pretty significant population increase. You've worked in a lot of different places. How do you expect for zoning or land uses to change, given what you've seen as you've been building out the Delaware Zoning Atlas?
Yeah, great question. Working around different parts of the country, we see that jurisdictions really have a wide range of tools at their disposal within their zoning power to manage their population increases. So one of the things I might expect to see could be creation of new overlay districts. These are often kind of a supplement or in some cases a replacement of an existing district's regulation, and those could be meant to allow more density. So that's kind of one tool working with what you've already got. You may see a little bit of pushback to population increase. So perhaps there is a more defensive approach by conserving open space and land a little more intentionally. And then perhaps a third might just be more annexation overall. Jurisdictions with smaller land areas may be looking to their unincorporated neighbor to take in and zone some more land.
Ashley, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, another contribution or beneficial contribution might be to, well, the potential creation of more open space land and to protect it from suburban development, as we've spoken of. This could help with creating spaces for people who are coming in. Um, I would probably mention that along with what Coral says. I agree with most of those points.
Great. I wanted to ask the question about, or maybe I'll answer this one, the future of the Atlas in the regions around Delaware. And the question is about, will we be completing analysis of Philadelphia and Pennsylvania soon? I'll just speak from the perspective of the person who's always trying to go out and seek funding for Land Use Atlas, which is the nonprofit organization building the Zoning Atlas and the Preservation Atlas. And I will say I have tried for multiple years to try to find funding for the state of Pennsylvania because it's so important. Obviously, one of the highest population states, and with 2 pretty big population centers in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. We are very pleased that we have received a grant to finish out the Pittsburgh metro area. So the western part of the state is going to, you're going to start seeing that fill out on the map. The eastern part of the state in the Philadelphia region, you will see Philadelphia pop up on the map. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks. We have one of our star dual analysts who's working in Philadelphia right now to get that important city up on the map. And we'll hope to start on the Philadelphia suburbs at some point, maybe later this year. But that would be something that's not funded by grant work, just because we know we have to get it done. So Philadelphia, hopefully coming soon. We do have the New Jersey suburbs of Philadelphia that is already up on the map, and we're hoping to fill out some of New Jersey as well. But you can see if you look at the map that we've got all of North Carolina, all of Virginia. We've got DC. We've got the Baltimore area of Maryland. And so we do really want to finish building out the Mid-Atlantic. And so you'll also see the Maryland side of the DC metro area coming up in the near future. Great. I have another question for Ashley as well. Ashley, you've worked in a lot of different parts of the country, and you've seen city codes versus rural codes. I didn't know if you noticed anything special or different about the Delaware County codes, their complexity or otherwise.
I would say that one thing I did notice in Delaware, as we mentioned, with the way that things are defined, can sometimes cause, I would say, maybe not confusion, but it differs from what we typically have seen. I would also say that I found in Newcastle specifically that the county was regulating the local jurisdictions or a number of local jurisdictions, and that can be helpful in some cases to create some consistency for specific areas as it pertains to understanding ADU regulations or parking regulations and so forth. Another thing that I found was that the county zoning codes were complex, and they did mention a lot of opportunities for multifamily uses, as it differs to more smaller jurisdictions that focused mainly on single family uses. Oh,
Okay, maybe not. I will ask you both then about advice you have for people interested in rewriting zoning codes. So we saw some headlines, people who are proposing legislation, both statewide, and I'm sure there's some conversations happening at the local level as well. Just would be interested in your advice that you might have as readers, diligent readers and consumers of zoning codes. How would you encourage people to think about the process of zoning rewrites? What sorts of principles would you hope that they instilled in their rewriting process?
I would suggest to really consider the population that or that you're catering to. For example, if you know that your population is aging out or is very youthful, we can include spaces that cater to the needs of these groups. For example, if you have majority single family housing, you might want to include regulations for ADU opportunities so that families feel comfortable taking in their family members, and it's affordable, making it accessible, as well as open spaces, whether you're young, old, or in between, we can all do with some open spaces. And considering parking regulations, I think we can always look at how we can utilize this to benefit not only the environment, but the people at hand or that we are catering to. We also have to understand the implications of making something require public hearing as opposed to being permitted by right, as well as the importance of making maps legible for the public, and easy to access so they know what is allowed.
Great. Coral, do you have any advice to folks who are thinking about redrawing their zoning maps?
Oh boy, that's a great question, Sarah. In the interest of not remaking the wheel, keep it clean, keep it simple, uh, clear colors, clear boundaries. Um, you know, I will say that oftentimes what we're finding now is a dual product. A city may have a PDF map, they may have an interactive map, which is fantastic. As an interactive map builder, I love seeing the technology spread out, and it's a great way to give the public access. Make sure what you're putting on both is the same. Clearly identify the date that is the effective date of the data. Account for all of your land. We have a huge side project going where we try to account for land that isn't zoned, and that is a significant effort just determining that. Um, and in any case, if you are trying to accommodate what's in your city, think more about what you may be dealing with in the future. So building on what Ashley said, if you can treat your, we have often cities a significant capital planning process, right, for infrastructure. If you can think about human capital planning and project that based on population data, you can have an understanding of not only what sort of housing you need, but then all the infrastructure that it will take to provide that housing.
Great. So I'm hearing simplicity, transparency, legibility, accessibility, very consistent with what we're trying to do with the National Zoning Atlas. So I wanted to thank everybody who participated today, our many team members, including our senior analysts here, our analysts across our team as a whole, and our engagement director, Diana Drogaris, who behind the scenes has orchestrated this and all of our outreach and public facing events. So thanks to the team for everything that you've done to build the Delaware Zoning Atlas, and hope folks on the call go out and use it. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.